Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 13.5 has been out for a couple weeks at this point, and I've been using it primarily on my iPhone 11 Pro Max, and it's been one of the better iOS 13 updates, and it should be since we're so far into it. But I wanted to talk about how it's been for me on my iPhone 11 Pro Max. I've also been using it full-time on my iPad Pro 2020, iPad Pro 12.9. I have it on the iPhone XR, and I have it on a bunch of other devices as well, but I went back to the YouTube community poll that I do every week for the new versions, and there's 15,000 plus votes and over 500 comments. So I went back, took all of that information to see how it's been not only over the past 1 week before that, but up to this point, how it's been for all of you. So I took all of the new comments and all of those things into account with this particular video. So let's talk about how it's been for me, then we'll talk about how it's been for you, and then we'll take a look at battery and performance, and then some of the comments as well. And so the first thing is, on my iPhone 11 Pro Max, it's been pretty good. I still have occasional issues with Mail. So Mail seems to be good for the most part. You'll see it has a 1 here for a notification. Usually when I go into Mail, it's fine, but then sometimes it has to reload and check for Mail again. So this was the issue I was having before with it, and it seems like it's a continued issue. Apple has not resolved it 100%. However, many of you have said that it's been much better. Now, other than that, notifications do seem to be hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes I'll get a bunch of them popping up on my screen and they're not there. Then I'll go back later and there'll be a bunch of them. So some from YouTube and other notifications as well. And so I go back and forth into a lot of these, and I sometimes see a lot of notifications and sometimes I don't see my notifications. So what's going on with that, I'm not sure, but I noticed that quite a few of you said the same thing in the comments as well. But other than that, I've had no other issues. I've had no lockups, no slowdowns when in settings or anything like that. Scrolling is good. No lockups, no freezes, no slowdowns, really no frame rate drops, nothing at all. I've noticed that RAM management has been pretty good. I haven't really had any issues with apps reloading. Occasionally YouTube will do that, but you'll see it's just refreshing my video feed. So in general, it's been pretty good. So that's great. I would say it's probably the most stable iOS 13 version to date, and it should be after all of this time. So iOS 14 will be shown in just a couple of weeks. I'll talk more about that towards the end of the video. But given that it's almost a year old as far as its overall development time, or maybe longer than that, it's finally much better. Now, other than performance, battery life for me has been pretty good as well. So if we go into my battery life, I'll show you that on the iPad as well. My battery health is at 98%. And like I've said that I mentioned in every one of these follow-up videos, battery health is determined by the physical condition of the battery within the phone. It is not determined by an update or anything like that. It just simply rechecks the quality or the performance capability and the capacity of the physical battery, since they degrade over time. All batteries degrade over time, and until someone invents one that doesn't, that's what we have to deal with on all phones, cars, everything that uses batteries. That's just the way it works. Now, as far as my battery life during that time, you'll see here over the last 10 days, it goes up and down, and that depends on whether or not I'm using my phone or my iPad or Mac or whatever I'm doing. It just depends day to day. But you'll see every one of these days, I'm using it about 3.5 hours of screen on time. You'll see 3 hours and 18 minutes of screen on time, 2 hours and 30 minutes of screen off time. So screen off time is maybe I have music playing in the background with the screen turned off. And then you go into it, now we're on screen on time. And you'll see over the past few days, my actual usage has gone up, but the battery has gone down. So that means I'm using less power, but getting more screen on time. So you'll see almost, well, maybe 40% of my battery life got me almost 4 hours of screen on time. That means we are still getting the expected 10 to 12 hours of screen on time, plus I'm getting additional screen off time hours. So the battery has been really, really good on this update. Now, when it comes to the iPad and what many of you are saying as well, I have some statistics for you in a little bit, but on my iPad, let's take a look at the battery as well. So if we go into the settings, we'll go down to battery. There is no battery health on iPad. I know a lot of you ask me when they'll do that. I'm not sure that they will, to be honest. And honestly, I'd like to see them switch it to good to bad instead of a percentage. Now, keep in mind, I don't charge this every single day. I charge this every few days. So you'll see I charged it this morning, or left it charged in last night. It was 100% when I woke up, and I've used it 2 hours and 19 minutes today and had 42 minutes of screen off time. And I'm at about a quarter of the battery. Now, most iPads should get about 10 hours of screen on time, and that's what I'm experiencing on this 2020 iPad Pro. So expect about 10 hours. It seems to be staying where it should be, and I haven't really had any issues on the iPad. The same is true as far as performance, and performance on older iPads as well. No problems there. Now, for those of you concerned about older phones and battery life, most of you say it's really good. Battery life on all the phones in general are good. In fact, here are the statistics from the YouTube comments. I took all 500 comments, anyone that mentioned battery. I took that and then figured out what the percentage was after counting all of the different comments on battery. So for example, 29% said battery was worse. So that means 71% of you said it was the same or better than iOS 13.4.1. So that's a pretty good sign. 71% is quite high. We don't have a lot of complaints about battery life. There are some, of course, but after this almost 2-week period, 71% of you are saying you have the same or better battery life with iOS 13.5. Now with the iPhone XR and older phones performance, people are saying it's increased performance. Performance on older phones is better, and in general, it's just a better experience. And I know some people haven't installed it because they're concerned about contact tracing and privacy, and I understand that, but Apple has made it very private. In fact, it's turned off by default. So if you go to privacy, and yes, some people are saying they could turn it on in the future. I don't think you'll see that from Apple, but you'll see it's off by default. You would have to have a supported country or state or wherever you live support an app that actually utilizes contact tracing. Once you have that app, then you would have to install the app, turn it on in contact tracing in the app, and then turn it on here also. So it's sort of a double check of a way not to have it on unless you absolutely want it on. So there's that right now. And so some people are concerned. I personally am not concerned. If you want it on, turn it on. If you have those tracing apps, if you don't, leave it off. Now, before we take a look at some of the YouTube comments and the poll, you'll see here are all the issues mentioned that everyone had. Now, you'll see battery is mentioned 143 times. Some people mention that battery is great, and then they'll say battery health. So that actually counts as 2 of those. So just keep that in mind, that 143 doesn't mean good or bad. It just means that's how many people mention the word. So in general, most people were saying heating or the battery getting warm or the phone getting warm when doing normal tasks is better. Not everybody, but most people. And then also you can see here are all the different devices that people are using as well. And so I was surprised to see that most people, at least that are commenting and saying what device they're using, are using an iPhone 11. So that's pretty interesting. They're using the 11 as their main device. So that's pretty neat. And I like to see what you guys are using as your main phones. Now let's take a look at the YouTube community poll. Now you can see the poll has been out for, well, a little bit over a week at this point, but the update has been out to beta testers, the final version, for almost 2 weeks at this point. But for those that commented on this, and there's over 15,000 votes, so 15K votes right there, you can see 54% of you said it was great. Only 3% said it was terrible. This is great news. And then 10% said okay, but some bugs. 16% didn't update, and 17% are on Android. So thanks again for participating, even though iOS doesn't really matter to, well, Android users too much. Now, as far as the poll goes, that means about 13% that installed it anyway are having issues, but in general, it's a great update, especially when we have 15,000 plus votes with people commenting and things. So let's take a look at some of the newest comments. I'm not going to go all the way back since I read a bunch last week, but we'll go over some of them and take a look at what some of you had to say. Now, the first one says, still issues with LTE and Wi-Fi, iPhone XS Max. Some people are having issues. I don't know if it's carrier related or if it's your Wi-Fi router. Most people are saying that it's much better. But if it's both, maybe try a hard reboot and see if that fixes anything. Otherwise, maybe reset the router and see if that fixes anything. It's hard to say if that will do anything, but thankfully I haven't had too many issues at all with it now. And to follow up with that, it has a problem with SIM card on iPhone X. And again, if you're having an issue with the SIM card itself, you may want to go to your carrier and get a new one if it is actually having an issue. I'm using iPhone SE first gen. I've had a lot of issues updating iOS 13, especially battery draining, heating, and some weird bugs. I really don't complain about performance. Performance has always been great. I'm on iOS 13.5 now. After using more than a week, I'm writing this review. This is what I'm expecting for a long time. Everything has been super fixed. Battery draining, nope. Heating, it just warms up when doing intensive tasks, which is completely normal. Heating while charging, no. Performance and RAM management, honey butter, overall, great. What an awesome update on my iPhone 11 Plus. I think you mean Pro Max, but either way, I think it's the same thing. iPhone 10, so far so good. Face mask ID is epic. Love it since I'm also a biker. Recognizes the helmet. Having overheating issues on my iPhone 10. It gets rather hot when using mobile data. The buggy notification tone is back. The one that sounds severally. Anyone else? I think you mean multiple times, but I've seen that as well. So far, so good on my iPhone 11, running on iPhone XR, and all working well. Battery does not last as long as when on Beta 4. XS Max, snappy, no issues, and battery life is good. Mask detection capability is useful, no complaints here. Battery life is significantly improved. With 36% used on my iPhone 11, I got 4 hours and 34 minutes. With 36% used, I get around 3 hours. There's 2 people here that say on their 11 Pro Max that the battery is actually draining more quickly. But again, the majority seem to say that it's great. Anyone else's iPhone charging way too fast. Mine goes from 0 to 100 in like 30 minutes. Not normal at all. I would be really interested in what charger you're using if it's going that fast. It really shouldn't be. Normally it will charge very fast up to about 50%, slow down a little bit, charge up to 80, and then finish 80 to 100 much slower. And that's pretty typical of the way you would preserve battery over time. So I'd love to know what charger you're using though. Using iPhone 7, no issues, glad for that. After updating the iOS version, there are a ton of app updates on the App Store. After updating, whenever I opened an app, it gives me an error showing I don't own that app. Called iTunes and the agent told me to delete and re-download the app. So this was a known issue that Apple has confirmed that they've fixed. There were a ton of updates to fix it. So they realized there was some sort of issue with apps. They fixed it on their side. It wasn't actually part of iOS 13.5, thankfully. So they didn't need an update push to fix it. But they were able to fix it by just pushing all those updates again. So people were seeing updates that they'd already updated to, but then once you re-updated to them, it fixed all those issues with people having issues opening apps, Losing about 18% charge overnight on standby after I update. I always leave it charging at night. There's no harm doing that, especially now with the battery health manager. 6S, it's great. I lost 4% battery health in 3 months. Is that normal? It's hard to say depending on your usage, but it's fine. 80% after 2 years is normal, according to Apple. Had almost no issues since I got iOS 13. iPhone 11 Pro battery is great. Very few issues. Love it so far. And then one more. It says it's been great on my iPhone 11 Pro Max. Really fast and smooth and really great battery. And so in general, and you'll see here too, I'll read this one. It says battery life has definitely improved 8+. So in general, iOS 13.5 is fixed after a year of being out, basically, or almost, at least to beta testers anyway. It's fixed the majority of issues, thankfully. So I'm really happy to say that it's working great on most devices. And if it's not and you just installed it, give it a couple days. It usually improves. Now with the iOS 13.5 jailbreak that's out, I would say that Apple will probably push iOS 13.5.1 early this coming week. It wouldn't surprise me. In fact, I thought they'd do it already, but it wouldn't surprise me if they push it June 1st or 2nd. And that's to block that, of course, but also maybe patch any additional security holes and maybe some bug fixes. It's really hard to say what Apple's doing until they do it, but at that point, we should see probably an update this week regarding that at least. Now, as far as iOS 14, well, expect that on the 22nd when we have WWDC. They should have a keynote, so expect the beta. So iOS 14 beta 1, we should see it if they keep with what they've done in the past. And so finally, we'll have some new features, probably some stability, and usually, like I said in a previous video, every other year it gets much better as far as stability. So I would expect that pretty soon. So that's it for iOS 13.5. Hopefully we'll get a little update this week, maybe some more bug fixes for those that are having a few issues with things like mail still. But let me know what you've found in the comments below, and if you're having any additional problems, I'd love to hear from you as well. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description as I always do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.